not look like I'd been crying earlier. You know that kind of tired look? The one you wear when you're lonely, but used to it? The knock came. 3 of them. Sharp. Confident. Like they belonged there. When I opened that door. Phew. If I close my eyes now, I can still feel the draft that came in with them. Not from outside, but from the shift. The change. The moment my world quietly rearranged itself and didn't even tell me. They stepped in smiling, laughing, smelling like cologne and office air, and something else I hadn't felt in a while, attention. Real, focused, electric attention. It wasn't dramatic, not at first. No heavy breathing or forbidden touches. Just the way Marcus looked at me like I wasn't background noise. The way Jared cracked jokes that made me laugh in a way I hadn't laughed in months. The way Sam noticed the half-finished painting on the easel in the corner and said, "You're an artist?" No one asks me that anymore. Hell, I don't even ask myself. They were just supposed to pick up a file. But something else got picked up that night, too, something in me. Something I didn't even know I'd put down. And before I knew it, I was pouring coffee. The same way I used to for Daniel back when he still looked at me like he meant it. We stood around the kitchen island, talking, laughing, and I remember thinking, this feels nice. Is that so wrong? But what I didn't know then is that sometimes the smallest invitations can open the biggest doors. And when you open the door wide enough, you don't just let people in, you let consequences in. You let truths in. You let temptation in, without even realizing it's found a seat at your table. That night, it started with a file. It ended with me questioning everything I thought I knew about love, loyalty, and myself. So before we go any deeper, I just need to ask, have you ever done something you knew might hurt? But it felt so good just to feel something again? Yeah? Then keep listening. Because what happened next, even I didn't see coming. Subscribe to Heartfelt Tales Unfold. If you believe some stories aren't black and white, but are lived in the deep, painful, complicated gray, you belong here. And trust me, this story, it's not what you think. Before I tell you what happened after that night, you need to understand the world I was living in. Because things don't just fall apart overnight. They chip away slowly, until you wake up one day and realize you're just a ghost in your own life. I'm 32. Been married to Daniel for almost 9 years. We met in college. He was the sharp, focused guy with a plan. I was the dreamy type, always sketching, always painting, believing in big love and slow mornings. Back then, he made me feel like I was magic. He'd hold my hand like he never wanted to let go. But somewhere along the line, that changed. Not all at once. No big betrayal or screaming match. Just, slowly, quietly. He got a job offer in corporate real estate, and that job started swallowing him whole. First, it was the long hours. Then the late-night meetings. Then the silence. He'd come home, drop his keys on the counter, give me a half-smile that didn't reach his eyes, and collapse onto the couch. Dinner would be cold by then. So would I. And it wasn't the physical absence that hurt the most. It was the emotional one. Like I was a roommate. A glorified nanny. The woman who washed his clothes and reminded him of appointments, but not the woman he once couldn't go a day without touching. I tried everything. New recipes. New lingerie. Weekend plans. Even tried not trying just to see if he'd notice. He didn't. And don't get me wrong, Daniel's not a bad man. He's decent. He provides. He doesn't yell. But maybe that's part of the problem. He doesn't anything. No passion. No fight. No interest. Just autopilot. I was standing next to a man who'd stopped seeing me long ago, and I kept hoping he'd turn his head and realize I was still right there. We have 2 kids. Both in school now, which means the house is quiet during the day. Too quiet. You'd think I'd enjoy the peace, but there's something about an empty house. When your heart's also empty, it echoes. Every creak of the floorboard feels like a reminder that no one's coming to find you. And the walls. They started to feel less like protection and more like a cage. Now, about the men who walked through that door. Let me start with Marcus. You know that guy who doesn't have to try too hard to get your attention? That's Marcus. He's got this grin that makes you feel like he knows something you don't. Talks fast, laughs louder than necessary. Always has a joke. But the thing about Marcus is, he watches. Like, really watches you. He'd ask me something small, like how I liked my coffee. But look at me in a way that made me feel completely undressed emotionally. Like he wasn't just hearing me, he was reading me. And I didn't know how badly I wanted to be read. Then there's Sam. The quiet one. Soft-spoken, polite, keeps his hands in his pockets like he's always carrying something delicate. But don't let the quiet fool you, he notices things. Like when I adjusted my sleeve one day, trying to hide a burn mark from cooking dinner, and he said, "You all right?" Or when he complimented a painting that even Daniel hadn't acknowledged after 2 weeks of it sitting on the wall. He's the kind of man who listens with his whole face. And after years of being with someone who barely noticed when I got a haircut, that kind of attention felt dangerous. And then there's Jared. Blunt. Loud. The kind who calls it like he sees it. The first thing he ever said to me was, "You don't look like someone who enjoys being bored." I laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was true. He teases Daniel constantly about being uptight, about needing to take vacations. But underneath the jokes, there's this glint. A challenge. Like he knows something about the cracks in our marriage, and he's daring me to look closer. The three of them couldn't be more different, but together? They filled every space Daniel had left empty. Laughter, attention, curiosity. Each in their own way, they reminded me of parts of myself I had almost forgotten, playful parts, passionate parts, parts that still wanted to feel alive. And me? I was lonely. Not just missing hugs or kisses. I missed being asked how I was really doing. I missed being surprised. I missed being someone's favorite. There's something terrifying about realizing you've built a life with someone who wouldn't notice if you disappeared, except for the laundry not being done. And even scarier? Letting 3 strangers into that space and feeling more alive in 1 hour than I had in the last 3 years. It wasn't love. It wasn't even lust. Not yet. It was hunger. Not for sex, but for connection. For being seen. Heard. Held, even if only in words, even if only in glances. So when they left that night, when the door shut behind them and I was alone again in the silence, I realized something terrifying. I didn't feel guilty. I felt awake. And that right there? That scared me more than anything. Because once you wake up from a numb life, you can't just close your eyes and pretend you're asleep again. It started on a Tuesday. You know, one of those long, boring, gray ones where time feels like it's dragging its feet. The kind of day where the silence in the house doesn't feel peaceful, it feels loud. I had just finished cleaning up the kitchen after lunch. The kids were at school, Daniel was at work, and I was folding laundry while some reality show played in the background just to feel like someone else was in the house. Then my phone buzzed. It was Daniel. A short text, no greeting. Just, forgot the Wexford file. Big meeting. Can you grab it for me? Marcus, Jared, and Sam are swinging by to pick it up. Should be there in 20. No, thank you. No, how's your day? Just instructions. I stared at the screen for a second, then sighed and put the phone down. Went to the little cabinet by the stairs where he keeps his work stuff. Pulled out the worn, brown file marked Wexford Group, Q2. Same one I reminded him to pack the night before while he scrolled through his phone and mumbled, "Uh-huh." I placed it on the kitchen counter and looked around. Something in me buzzed. Not nerves, but something close. Maybe anticipation? Maybe curiosity. I caught a glimpse of myself in the hallway mirror. Messy bun. Hoodie, no makeup. I didn't want to impress anyone, but something made me pull the elastic from my hair. Let it fall a little. Just enough to look human again. I applied a bit of lip balm. Not lipstick. Just something to feel less invisible. 15 minutes later, the doorbell rang. 3 knocks. Then the bell. Confident. Crisp. Like they were sure I was expecting them. And I guess, in a strange way, I was. I opened the door. There they were. Marcus in front, all charm and swagger, holding a takeaway coffee like he lived here. Jared right behind him with that cheeky smile, and Sam, quiet, thoughtful, off to the side, hands in his coat pockets. "Hey," Marcus said, grinning. "Hope we're not catching you at a bad time." "No," I heard myself say. "It's fine. Come in." I stepped aside and let them in. And the air in the house changed. I don't know how else to explain it. It wasn't just their presence. It was what came with them. Energy. Warmth. Movement. They walked in like they'd been here before. Like it was normal. Jared cracked a joke about our doormat. Bless this mess? Relatable. Sam smiled at my painting near the hallway. "Yours?" I nodded, surprised. "Yeah, just a hobby." "It's not just a hobby," he said, soft. "That's talent." I laughed it off, but my chest tightened. I hadn't heard a compliment like that in months. Maybe years. I handed Marcus the file. "Here you go." "Thanks," he said. Then he looked past me, into the kitchen. "Is that coffee I smell?" I hesitated. This was supposed to be a quick handoff. 10 minutes, tops. But instead of saying goodbye, I heard myself say, "Would you like a cup before you go?" And Marcus smiled. "Would love one." They followed me into the kitchen like they belonged. Pulled out chairs, settled in. Jared started poking around the fridge magnets, reading the notes and laughing about a grocery list that still had wine circled twice. Sam asked about the kids. Marcus leaned on the counter, watching me make coffee like it was the most interesting thing in the world. The kettle whistled. The mugs clinked. And somehow, everything felt warmer. We talked. Laughed. They told work stories about Daniel. About how serious he always is. Jared joked, "Does he ever smile at home?" I smiled, but it felt more like a wince. He used to. Marcus didn't laugh. He just looked at me, really looked, and said, "He's lucky, you know." That moment hung in the air. The way he said it. Like it wasn't just polite. Like he meant it. I set the mug down in front of him, my hands a little shaky. "I think he forgets sometimes," I said, before I could stop myself. It got quiet for a second. Then Sam cleared his throat and changed the subject. But the tension stayed. Not the kind that makes you uncomfortable. The kind that makes your skin tingle. That whisper of, "You feel this too, don't you?" They stayed for almost an hour. Just 3 men, talking, laughing, sipping coffee in a house that had forgotten what laughter felt like. And me. I forgot I was someone who'd been tired all week. I forgot I was someone who'd stopped expecting surprises. I forgot that I was supposed to feel invisible. Because for the first time in months, I felt seen. And the worst part? I didn't want it to end. When they stood to leave, I found myself slowing down. Stalling. Wishing the file had gone missing, just so they'd have to come back. They said goodbye casually. Marcus winked. Jared told me to save some of that coffee for next time. Sam just looked at me for a beat too long before stepping out the door. And when I closed it behind them, I didn't feel like I'd just helped out my husband. I felt like I'd let something in. Something small, quiet, but alive, like a spark. And I knew, even if nothing ever happened, something already had. After they left, I just stood there, back pressed against the door, heart tapping against my ribs like it had somewhere urgent to be. The house felt quiet again, but not the same kind of quiet. This one was heavier, like it was holding its breath. I walked back to the kitchen, saw the 3 mugs on the counter. One half full, one with a lipstick mark I didn't remember leaving, and one still warm. And that's when it hit me. I didn't want them to leave. It wasn't just the conversation, or the laughter, or the compliments. It was the way they saw me, or maybe the way I saw myself through them. I sat at the table, staring at nothing, just replaying the whole thing in my head. Every word, every look, Every accidental brush of fingers when I handed over the coffee. Every time Marcus looked at me and held that gaze a second too long. Was I imagining it? Was I overthinking? I mean, it's not like anything happened. But something did, didn't it? I could still hear Marcus's voice in my ear. He's lucky, you know. The way Sam smiled when I talked about painting. The way Jared joked like we'd known each other for years. They treated me like I was present. Not background. Not furniture. Present. And that scared me. Because I didn't realize how badly I missed that feeling until I got a taste of it. The worst part? The guilt didn't hit me right away. It crept in slowly, like fog seeping under a door. Later that night, I sat beside Daniel on the couch. The same way I always did. Dinner was done. Kids were in bed. Dishes cleaned. And we were both there, but not together. He was scrolling through his phone, chuckling at some meme. I asked him how his meeting went. He just said, "Fine," and kept scrolling. I wanted to tell him, not about the coffee, not about the flirting, but about how I felt, how I didn't recognize us anymore, how I needed him to see me again. But I didn't say anything, because I knew he'd just nod and say, "I'm tired." And suddenly, I felt like cheating wasn't the coffee. Cheating was letting someone else show me what my own husband forgot. I went to bed early that night, lying on my side of the bed, wide awake, staring at the wall. I kept replaying the conversation with Marcus. That wink, that smile, that feeling of being noticed. And I hated how much I loved it. The next morning, I woke up before everyone else. Stood in the bathroom, brushing my teeth, staring at my reflection. And I noticed. I looked different. Not because I changed, but because now I knew someone else saw me. I didn't put on a hoodie that day. I picked a blouse I hadn't worn in months. A touch of mascara. A dab of lipstick, red, not nude. And just before I left the house for groceries, I pulled it off. Wiped it clean. Told myself too much. I was already battling thoughts I wasn't ready to admit out loud. That day, my phone buzzed while I was in the store. It was Marcus. "Thanks for the coffee yesterday. You've got great taste." Just that. Simple. Innocent enough, if you ignore the timing, the undertone. I stared at the message for 10 minutes. Typed out, "It was nice having you over." Then deleted it. Typed again, "You're welcome." Deleted that too. I ended up writing nothing. But that silence? It screamed. All afternoon, I felt this tug in my chest. Like a war had started between who I've always been and who I was becoming. I wasn't chasing anything. I wasn't planning anything. But I also wasn't stopping anything. And that terrified me. I started drafting messages to myself, little notes in my phone. Not love letters, not fantasies. Just thoughts I couldn't say out loud. He looked at me like I mattered. Why do I feel more like myself around strangers than I do with the man I married? If feeling wanted is a crime, then I'm already guilty. Each one of them I deleted right after. Because even thinking them felt dangerous. But they were there. And once those thoughts showed up, they didn't leave. I started waiting for another text. Checking my phone a little too often. Replaying moments that barely lasted seconds, but now felt like entire lifetimes. I began to question everything. Was I really happy? Was I still in love with my husband, or just in love with the idea of what we used to be? And most of all, why did a few kind words from men I barely knew feel like air after drowning? That's when I knew this wasn't about them. It wasn't about Marcus or Jared or Sam. It was about me. About the pieces of myself I'd buried under laundry and routine and disappointment. About the woman I used to be before she became invisible in her own home. I wasn't planning an affair, but something was unfolding. Quietly, dangerously, beautifully, and deep down. I wanted it. It didn't stop at the coffee. I told myself it would. That it was just a one-off moment, a break in routine, nothing more. But I think even then, a part of me knew, that door I opened, it was never just for the file. The next morning, Marcus texted again. Thanks again for the coffee. Daniel's lucky. Short. Simple. But that last sentence? It sat with me. Daniel's lucky. It wasn't a compliment. It was a reminder. A quiet way of saying someone notices you, even if he doesn't. And the way he sent it, mid-morning, not too late, not too early, felt calculated. Like he wanted me to know he was thinking about me, without making it obvious. I didn't reply. Not because I didn't want to, but because I really wanted to, and that scared me. Later that week, I got a friend request on Facebook. Jared. No message, no wave. Just the request. I hesitated, stared at the screen. Then clicked accept. I didn't think much of it until the notifications started. Jared liked your photo. From 2018. The one where I was wearing that red dress on our anniversary trip. Before the babies. Before the silence. Then another. Jared liked your post. A painting I posted during lockdown. A woman standing in a field, alone, arms spread to the sky like she was begging the world to notice her. He didn't comment. Just liked. Quiet approval. Quiet validation. Like he was saying, I see you. And Sam. Sam was different. No texts. No social media. But the next time he came over, when they dropped something off for Daniel, he lingered. While Marcus and Jared laughed with Daniel in the living room, Sam stood by the easel in the hallway, looking at a half-finished piece I'd been working on. It's beautiful, he said, softly. I turned, surprised. It's not done. He nodded. That's the best part. It's becoming. I didn't say anything, because if I did, I might have cried. Daniel didn't notice the tension. Didn't pick up on the glances. Didn't ask why my cheeks were flushed when he walked into the room. He was too busy. Always busy. Phone in one hand, laptop in the other. I could have been wearing nothing but red paint, and he wouldn't have looked up. Then, out of nowhere, he suggested it. A game night. I swear, I almost laughed. He walked into the kitchen while I was loading the dishwasher and said, Hey, the guys want to come over Friday. Casual thing. I figured we could order food, play something like old times. Old times? There were never any old times with his coworkers. He never invited people into our home like that. But now? Suddenly he was opening the gates? I should have said no. I should have reminded him we barely talk, that we haven't even had a real date night in months. But instead, I said, sure. Sounds fun. I spent more time getting ready than I should have. Not because I wanted to impress them, but because I didn't know how not to care anymore. The red blouse came out again. Not too tight. Not too revealing. Just enough. The lipstick stayed on this time. When they arrived, everything felt light on the surface. Laughter. Drinks. A few harmless jokes. Jared brought a board game. Marcus brought wine. Sam brought a cheesecake homemade. Daniel was in a good mood for once. Loosening up, making jokes, acting like he hadn't been MIA emotionally for the last year. It was nice. Almost normal. Until it wasn't. Halfway through the night, someone suggested never have I ever. It was Jared, of course. Grinning like a teenager. Come on. Don't be boring. I glanced at Daniel. He shrugged. Why not? The bottle was opened. The rules were laid out. Fingers went up. Drinks went down. At first, it was innocent. Never have I ever lied on a resume. Never have I ever been arrested. Never have I ever snuck out past curfew. Laughter bounced off the walls. Even I was smiling. Then the questions got slower, softer, more loaded. Never have I ever thought about someone else while in a relationship. Jared raised his eyebrows at that one. Eyes darted around the room. I didn't drink, but my heart did something strange, like it skipped. Then Marcus leaned forward, his voice low, deliberate. Never have I ever wanted something I couldn't have. And the room went still. The kind of still that makes your breath feel loud. No one spoke. No one laughed. Just silence. Then Marcus drank. eyes locked on mine. He didn't smirk. He didn't wink. He just drank. And something inside me twisted. Tight. Hot. Scared. Because in that 1 second, we both knew he wasn't playing anymore. After Marcus said it, never have I ever wanted something I couldn't have, and took that slow, deliberate sip. The room didn't recover. Oh, people laughed. Jared cracked some joke about wanting a Tesla. Daniel chuckled, oblivious, already halfway through his 3rd glass of wine. But I couldn't laugh. Because I felt like I'd been stripped open. Like someone had seen the parts of me I tried to keep buried under routine and responsibility and being a good wife. That night, something shifted. Not just in the air in me. I started noticing every little thing Marcus did. The way he leaned in closer than necessary when he asked if I wanted more wine. The way his fingertips brushed mine when he passed me the bottle. The way he looked at me when he thought no one else was watching. But I noticed something else too. Daniel. He started to fade, right there in the room. His laughter dulled. His eyes glazed. He stretched out on the couch, mumbled something about being tired, and just drifted off. Right in the middle of the conversation. Right in the middle of me. I watched him lying there, mouth slightly open, one shoe still on. And I felt nothing. No sympathy. No concern. Just a quiet ache. Because in that moment, I realized the man I once begged to come to bed now fell asleep in front of everyone without a care in the world. And not one part of him noticed the storm building in the room around me. When the game ended, Sam stood up first. "Thanks for the night," he said. "It was fun." But his eyes found mine. Soft. Understanding. Almost like he knew something had happened, even if it hadn't happened yet. Jared followed, gave me a one-armed hug and whispered, "Next time, real dares." I smiled, but my heart was pounding. Then Marcus stood. Slow. Like he wasn't quite ready to leave. He glanced at Daniel, still snoring softly on the couch. Then turned to me. "You need help cleaning up?" His voice was low, careful. But his eyes weren't careful at all. I should have said no. I should have walked him to the door and shut it behind him. Instead, I said, "Sure. Just a few things." He followed me into the kitchen. I started picking up glasses, stacking plates. Trying to stay busy. Trying to stay calm. But he didn't move. He just leaned against the counter and watched me. "You okay?" he asked. I nodded too quickly. "Yeah, just tired." He tilted his head. "You sure that's all it is?" I froze. Just for a second. But it was long enough for him to notice. Because, he continued, his voice softer now, sometimes tired is code for something else. Like, forgotten. Or lonely. I turned away, pretending to rinse something that didn't need rinsing. My hands shook under the water. "I'm fine, Marcus." "Okay," he said. But he didn't believe me, and neither did I. The silence stretched. Then he stepped closer. Not enough to touch. Just enough to make me feel him. "You know," he said quietly, "it's crazy how someone can live with you, sleep beside you, eat your food, and still not see you." My breath caught. And then he reached out. His fingers brushed a piece of hair behind my ear. Slow. Gentle. Like he'd done it 1,000 times in his head already. I didn't move. I didn't pull away. I didn't speak. Because in that moment, I wanted it. Not just the touch, but the way it made me feel. Wanted. Seen. Powerful. He leaned in, his face close to mine. Close enough that I could feel his breath, smell the wine on it. Close enough that my body tensed and softened all at once. And then he kissed me. Not rushed. Not hungry. It was slow. Intentional. Like he was giving me a choice. And I didn't stop him. It didn't last long. Barely a breath. But it was long enough. When we pulled away, I didn't speak. He didn't either. There was nothing to say. He looked at me like he already knew that everything had just changed. He picked up his keys. Walked to the door. And before he stepped out, he looked back. I'll see you soon. And then, he was gone. I stood in that dim kitchen, surrounded by dirty glasses and candle wax and the soft hum of a refrigerator that felt louder than ever. Daniel still slept on the couch. And me? I just stood there, fingers pressed to my lips, heart pounding so loud I swore the walls could hear it. And that's when I realized I had let them in. Not just Marcus. Not just Jared. Not just Sam. I had let something in. Something deeper. Darker. Something that had been waiting just beneath the surface, quietly begging to be seen. And now that it was out, there was no putting it back. Subscribe now to Heartfelt Tales Unfold. Because the story? It only gets more complicated from here. And trust me, you won't want to miss how it spirals. After that night, nothing looked different, but everything felt different. The glasses were washed. The wine bottles tossed. The furniture put back exactly the way it was. Daniel never asked a thing. Never noticed that his coworkers stayed later than him. Never even asked who cleaned up. But I noticed everything. Marcus's kiss lingered, not just on my lips, but in the corners of my mind. It wasn't just about the kiss. It was what it unlocked. And suddenly, the silence in the house wasn't peaceful or lonely. It was loud. It screamed with things unsaid. The next morning, my phone buzzed. Marcus again. Last night was something. Just that. Simple. But the space between those 3 words carried a weight. I didn't respond. I couldn't. I typed something. Deleted it. Typed again. Then turned the phone face down like it could burn me. Later that day, another message. You okay? And that one? That one got to me. Because no one had asked me that, not like they meant it, in so long. Not Daniel. Not anyone. The messages didn't stop. He'd text little things throughout the day. Just past a cafe that smells like your kitchen. Do you always wear that red blouse for company? Still thinking about you. And every time, my heart would race. Not from excitement, but from fear. From knowing. I started silencing my phone when Daniel was around. Started jumping every time it buzzed. Jared wasn't subtle either. The next time we all saw each other, at a small team barbecue, Daniel dragged me to. Jared smirked when he hugged me and whispered, "You've been glowing lately." Must be the late nights. No one else heard it. But I did. And I knew what he meant. His jokes became loaded. Everything he said had a double edge. He never said too much, but just enough to make me question whether he knew what had happened, or was just waiting for it to happen again. Then there was Sam. He stopped making eye contact. Didn't linger. Didn't ask about my paintings. He'd greet me politely, nod, smile, but it felt different. Like he was watching from a distance. Not judging. Not cold. Just gone. It hurt more than I expected. And Daniel? He noticed none of it. Not the tension. Not my mood. Not how I started getting headaches at night just to avoid closeness. Not how I stayed in the shower longer, just to breathe. He'd come home, kiss my forehead like I was his little sister, and fall into the couch again. The space between us growing wider, thicker, heavier, like fog that no one talks about. I stopped wearing lipstick altogether. Stopped putting effort into my clothes, then felt guilty when I realized I was only dressing up for men who weren't mine. Sometimes, I'd do my face anyway. Out of habit. Out of instinct. But 5 minutes before Daniel got home, I'd wipe it all off. Stand in front of the mirror, rubbing tinted balm off my lips like I was erasing the part of me that still wanted to be desired. I stopped painting. I stopped humming while I cooked. Even the way I moved around the house changed. I became quiet in a different way. Not passive, just calculated. Cautious. Because now, every knock on the door made my chest tighten. Every message made me look over my shoulder. Every moment I was alone, I replayed that night. That kiss. That heat between us. And the way I didn't push him away. Daniel didn't know. But I think I did. I knew I had crossed something. A line. A threshold. Even if it wasn't physical beyond that one moment, emotionally, I had gone somewhere I wasn't supposed to be. And I wasn't sure how to come back. There were times late at night, after Daniel had fallen asleep, the room dim and quiet, I'd stare at the ceiling and whisper, "What are you doing?" But no answer ever came. Just the echo of my own breathing. Just the guilt and the ache and the pull. Because once someone sees a part of you that's been buried for years, you don't want to go back to being invisible again. I still think about that night. Not constantly, but in quiet flashes. Like scenes from a movie I wasn't supposed to be in, but somehow starred in anyway. And I keep asking myself the same question, over and over. Did I cross a line, or did I simply wake up from a loveless sleep? Because truthfully, I'm not sure anymore. Some days, I feel guilty. Other days, I feel alive. Most days, I just feel split in two. It's not black and white. It's not a clear right or wrong. It's blurry. Like I'm standing in a fog where everything looks softer, but the danger is still there waiting. I didn't tell Daniel. Not because I wanted to hide it, but because there's nothing to tell that he'd understand. What would I even say? Hey, remember that night you passed out on the couch while your coworker kissed me in our kitchen? Remember when I stopped reaching for you because someone else reached first? He'd look at me with that same blank expression, that same tired stare. And it would break me more than anything else. Because the truth is, he already doesn't see me. He hasn't for years. And I don't know if I want to confess to something that was never going to be protected in the first place. But I have changed. Something inside me shifted, subtly, slowly, but permanently. It's not just about Marcus, or Jared, or even Sam. It's about me, and the way I've been starving. Not for sex, not for adventure, but for affection, for acknowledgement, for something as simple as I see you. I hear you. You matter. I've been giving and giving, emptying myself out in meals, in schedules, in small acts of devotion, and receiving nothing in return but silence and expectation. And when someone came along and offered me a single drop of attention, I drank it like I was dying. That's what emotional starvation does to you. It makes you question your boundaries. It makes you forget the rules you swore you'd never break. It makes you start justifying the things you once judged. Because in the absence of tenderness, even the wrong hands can start to feel like home. I didn't sleep with anyone. I didn't meet Marcus in a hotel. I didn't exchange promises or whisper lies. But something did happen. Something real. And I can't pretend it didn't change me. I betrayed something. Maybe not my vows, but maybe my values. Maybe my sense of self. Maybe the woman I promised I'd always be. And yet, I don't feel like a villain. I don't feel evil. I feel human. I feel like a woman who's been carrying a quiet ache for too long and finally stumbled into a moment where it wasn't aching anymore. But the moment passed, and now I'm left with the echo. I think about confronting Daniel, about sitting him down and saying, "Do you even love me anymore? Or are we just roommates with shared bills and a family calendar?" But I already know the answer. He'd say he does. He'd say, "Of course I do." Then ask what's for dinner. I think about talking to Marcus, about setting boundaries, about telling him not to text again. But part of me is scared. Not of him. Of losing what little spark of attention I've been clinging to. That's the shameful part. The craving. The way I now check my phone, not for emails, not for Daniel's name, but for his. The way I scroll through old messages, not to relive the moment, but to remember what it felt like to be seen for a change. Some nights, I stare at the ceiling and wonder, is this how people fall apart? Not in big explosions, but in small, quiet surrenders. A conversation here. A glance there. A kiss in a kitchen. A silence that stretches too far and goes on too long. I didn't cheat. But I'm not innocent. And the scariest thing of all, I'm not sure I want to go back to who I was before. Because once you taste what it's like to feel alive again, even for a moment, you start questioning every single part of the life you've built. Even the ones with your name on the mortgage. Let me ask you something. Have you ever been in a relationship where you felt invisible? Like you were doing everything right, showing up, staying loyal, staying quiet, but somehow still disappearing? Like you could scream inside your own home and no one would even flinch? Because if you have, then maybe you understand why I did what I did. Or maybe you don't. And I can take that too. But just tell me, was I wrong for wanting to feel seen again? Was it betrayal, or just a warning sign I ignored for too long? I need to know. Would you have told someone? Would you have confessed? Would you have shut the door the moment you felt the pull? Or would you, like me, have stood in your kitchen, heart pounding, wishing someone would just hold your face and say, "You matter. I see you." Be honest. Because the truth is, I don't think we talk about this part enough. Not the affairs, not the drama, but the slow, painful unraveling that happens when you love someone who stopped loving you back a long time ago and just never said it out loud. So comment below. Tell me your story. Or tell me what you think of mine. And if you're still here, still listening, thank you. I didn't think anyone would. If this hit something in you, if you've ever stood in that gray space between what's right and what's real, then you belong here. Subscribe to Heartfelt Tales Unfold. This is where we share the parts of love no one likes to admit out loud. The stories that live in the silence. The ones that keep you up at night. We don't judge here. We just unfold together. You can stay faithful and still feel hollow. You can keep every vow, every rule, every promise you ever made, and still betray something much deeper. Your heart. Your truth. Yourself. That's the part no one warns you about. They tell you not to cheat, not to lie, not to break the trust. But they never talk about what happens when you break quietly, because no one saw the cracks forming in the first place. What I let in that night, it wasn't just Marcus. It wasn't a kiss or a feeling or a possibility. It was a truth. A truth I had been avoiding for far too long. That I was lonely. That I was aching. That I had built a life so quiet, so controlled, so safe, that I forgot what it felt like to be touched by intention. And maybe that's the real danger. Not the men, not the temptation, but the numbness. Because once something wakes you up from that sleep, you can't go back to pretending you're okay. No, I never told my husband. And maybe I never will. What would be the point? It wouldn't change the kiss. It wouldn't make him love me the way he used to. It wouldn't undo the silence that stretched for years before any other man ever looked my way. So instead, I changed in other ways. I lock the door differently now. Not with fear, not with guilt, but with awareness. Because some doors should never be opened. But the ones we do open, they don't just show us who others are. They show us who we are, who we've become, who we've been hiding all along. So, if you're standing at a door right now, emotional or otherwise, pause. Ask yourself why your hand's on the knob. Is it curiosity? Loneliness? Truth? Because what you're really letting in is yourself. And once you do, you don't get to be the same again. Thank you for listening to my story. Subscribe to Heartfelt Tales Unfold if you believe in the power of the unspoken, the messy, the complicated, the heartbreakingly human. And if you're still here, maybe that means you've been there, too. You're not alone. Not now. Not ever.